Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information. Kate Campbell, welcome back to Australia and welcome to this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast.
It is wonderful to be back in the country, Owen. I haven't done a podcast for 6 weeks, so we'll see what this ends up with.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm sure it'll be great. And Monique Pizzica, aka Pizza, how you going?
Hello, I'm great.
This is your second episode that you've done.
Yeah, I think the first one was like the very first Valentine's episode we did like 3 years ago.
Right. So this is, I should say, it's a second remote recording. We're recording from the home office today rather than in studio. I'm a bit sick. Kate's been sick, so it probably makes sense that we can connect through the internet. Kate, highlight of your trip. Give it to us.
Going to see the Bodleian Library in Oxford was probably the highlight of the trip. That was amazing.
Bodleian Library.
Bodleian Library. I can't spell it for you on the spot, but there's lots of books chained to walls, lots of books in Latin, but amazing collection, a lot of history. So I was right on it. I booked the tour a month out and was able to look through the library rooms that are usually just there for students and staff. So that was really cool. So maybe one day I'll fulfill that bucket list aspiration of going and doing a short course at Oxford because I don't think I could afford the full degree, even if I got it.
Well, I think I did. I'm pretty sure you showed a photo on your Instagram or story or something where I did see. I mean, I think you went to a few, but I'm pretty sure I know the one that you're talking about. Chains on books. Is that like I don't know. It sounds like blasphemy to someone that reads a lot of books like you, Kate. Or was it kind of the opposite
how they used
of that?
To secure priceless books, but these days they just keep some of them as a display, and most of the books have an alarm system. So they kind of have they're in a sheath of sorts with a band running around it. So if a student takes the book off the shelf that they're not supposed to in certain sections, the librarian will get an alarm bell running on their computer.
I just picture that scene in Harry Potter where they go into the forbidden part of the library, whatever, and they open the book and that face comes out. It scares me every time.
Parts of Harry Potter were filmed at Oxford University, especially in the School of Divinity. So I got to see that in the tour as well. It wasn't really a Harry Potter tour. There were some running, but you could definitely see the inspiration for the movie in parts of the town.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's instantly what I thought about too. It's like where they're going to the part they're not allowed to be in. I did, when I was in the UK recently, did go and see the Harry Potter studios.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that was well worth the money. Like for the trip from London.
Did you have a butterbeer?
Yes, we did. Which, not to ruin the surprise for anyone, is just an Australian spider, basically. So,
true.
Yeah, at least you get to keep the cup. That's pretty cool. So, brought that home. So, have a butterbeer here in Australia. If you aren't already familiar, this is our monthly Money and Chill segment where we take it a bit easier. It's a bit more conversational. We go through some of the news of the week, some of the behind the scenes here at Rask. And we give you some money tips, tricks, hacks, resources as well. And so we each bring something new to the table. We've got a few interesting things today on ways to save money. We know cost of living is a real thing. We know some people would want an update on what's happening in the stock market because there was a bit of scariness this week. And we do talk about less serious stuff generally, it's fair to say. So if you do want more serious stuff, that's what the next episode out in your podcast feed will be about. But we do like to hear from you as well. So send in your questions. There's a link in your show notes. You can also use the new Rask community, which we'll talk about in a moment, to get in contact with us. Kate, where shall we start?
Well, Owen, it's Tuesday, the 6th of August right now, and everyone's probably heard a lot of headlines in the last few days about the ASX falling or it having its biggest fall since only a couple of years ago. The risk of recording podcasts a few days in advance is who knows where the market will be on Friday. Maybe we'll have gone back up 5% by Friday. So we'll see what happens when people listen to this. But I thought maybe we should chat about what's happening with the market and how are we reacting or not reacting with the news.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, it's good to timestamp this one in particular because we don't know exactly. And we don't always record episodes this far in advance, but some of our interviews typically are recorded quite in advance because they're not time stamped. They don't need to go out in a rush. But with this one in particular, we do have to be mindful that we don't know what the next few days holds by the time you listen to this. But earlier in the week for you, which is 24 hours for us, there were a few news headlines, particularly out of the United States, but also people who are familiar or in one way or another keeping tabs on what's happening in places like Japan, would have noticed that the stock market experienced what we call a lot of volatility, lots of ups and downs. And as per usual, no one knows why. Now, oftentimes with big market corrections, like say the GFC, which happened in 2008, 2009, it's only with hindsight, when there's kind of like a post-mortem or an autopsy completed on the financial system, that they realize what actually went wrong. In the moment, not many people even knew about it. There was some, like they were profiled in The Big Short, and many of those investors have since gone on to do worse than the market because they've probably suspected another one's coming every day of the year. But basically what happened earlier this week is people just got spooked, and that's pretty normal. The stock market does experience pretty meaningful falls every few weeks, every few months. This one was a little bit higher, as you said, Kate. So I think it was, for Australia, it was the biggest since COVID.
Well, I'm just having a look at ABC headline now, which is probably where a lot of people get their news. And yesterday, so 5th of August, the headline is ASX closes down 3.7% in worst two-day performance since 2022 after recession fears spook Wall Street as it happened.
Yeah, well, 2022, so let's say a couple of years. It's, we experienced a lot of volatility in early 2020. I think the bigger, more scarier news actually came from overseas. Normally what happens in the Australian stock market space, is that we follow what happens in the United States. But a lot of the volatility, the sell-off, let's say, happened at the same time that the Australian market was open on Monday. So that's not normal. Normally we follow whatever happens in the US. But in this case, it happened basically in the Asian time zone. So we saw the Japanese stock market sell off around about 10% at one stage, which is huge. Like the Japanese stock market's massive. And so the Australian stock market falling 3.7% doesn't look as bad relative to that. But then we saw in the United States, we saw a lot of the tech stocks get sold off basically when the time zone went around the world and the earth rotated. When there was daylight hours, the stock markets fell. And fortunately, fast forward 24 hours to Tuesday at the time of recording, and the Australian market is back in the green. So it's kind of fine. But in the United States, there were some really interesting headlines that I think were just coincidence. I don't think it was anything major to do with like the sell-off. But we saw Google lost an antitrust case where they will no longer be able to pay Apple to make their search engine the default search engine. So, when you go into your iPhone and you search for cute cat videos, Mon.
Yeah, every day.
Yep. Not to single you out, but I kind of did. Then you normally have that search conducted through Google unless you tell the iPhone to use a different search engine like DuckDuckGo or something like that. And Google, for all intents and purposes, can pay Apple around about $20 billion a year. And their argument has always been that, like for Android users or for Apple users, it's always been like, well, everyone uses Google. It's just the best option. Why don't we just install that on the phone for people? But then the implication of that has always been that by allowing Google to be the first mover in all of those kind of phones and devices, that search engines rely on scale. Like you need to be a bigger search engine in order for people to use you, but then also for websites to be indexed and so on and so forth. So it can actually be a case that, well, it was a case proven that effectively it kind of stifles competition. But it's interesting because the case
when's the last time you used a different browser that wasn't Google?
I only do it on Safari when I'm trying to test something on a website that's like being developed. So like just as a different tab. But yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the case was against Google, but Apple's going to be the big loser because Apple won't get its billions of dollars for pre-installed Google search. So now Apple will have to offer choice, basically, by the looks of it, which is what happened in Europe. And the second piece of news, which is kind of related to this, but in no way related in the sense that there's no cause and effect here. Warren Buffett sold a huge chunk of his Apple shares, and that was released at the same time as the market was falling. So people were like commentators who haven't obviously read at least one Warren Buffett letter or watched one Warren Buffett interview over the past 60 years have assumed that he's trying to time the market, which is kind of crazy. But the people who may not be familiar, Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's investment company, around nearly, I think it was over 40%, maybe over 45% of his investment company was just his Apple shareholding. So it's pretty reasonable that any one of us that would have one investment worth 40% of our portfolio would probably want to sell some of that eventually. So I think it was just a case of timing because he's already sold some, a few months back. So those were the two big news pieces. But other than that, guys, it's like, as far as I can tell, there's not much going on. The bond market's fine. Everything else is fine. Obviously, in the last week, we've had expectations that interest rates will be cut, which is good for stocks and good for property. So that's all I could find. That's the wrap. Sorry if it went on for a while.
So we just kept investing. We kept doing everything we normally do. We didn't change our plan. It's just part of the investing experience. And that's something we have grown to expect these days.
Yeah, I'll just finish with one thing and say that a lot of people who think that they can time when a market will crash often stay with like a big cash balance for quite a while. And what they do is they assume the stock market's going to crash. But a lot of the times they actually lose more money by not being invested than they do avoiding the crash. And even when the crash comes, they're the types of people who are too scared to be invested because it has crashed. So it's like a weird thing of psychology where people who are predicting the market to fall actually never get invested, or when they do, they end up missing out on all the gains that happened in the meantime because they were wrong. So in my career, at least, I think it makes the most sense to just be diversified, like to have like bonds today and this week are up, right? So if you've got bonds in your portfolio, you've got gold in your portfolio, you've got cash like in the bank, all that stuff's gone up this week while shares have gone down. And that's true diversification in action. So just stay diversified, keep investing for the long run, and the rest will take care of itself.
It reminds me of what Glenn said on the podcast that came out last week. Investing is easy, staying invested is the hard part. And I think that's really important. And that's a lesson that if you can master that as an investor, you're off to the races.
Yeah, because and it's such a good point, because you got to remember, like most of the time, you're not actually doing anything with your investing account or whatever. And it's actually time that does the heavy lifting. Like a lot of people are still kind of really worried about stocks. But the US stock market, as we covered in the recent market update, rose like 15, 20%, depending on which stock market you look at over the past year. And there's been so much fear around interest rates, inflation, cost of living. But all that stuff has gone up. Property prices went up 8% across the country in the year to June 30th. So like there can be all these concerns and fears in the world, but it still goes up. And so every day you have an opportunity to sell, it's probably better to have inaction rather than action. So that's the main headline for this week. We've got some money news, some hacks and lessons. Monique, you're the only one who hasn't shared your money hacks or lessons or whatever you're bringing to the table with the two of us. So we are waiting.
It's just that good. I had to keep it as a surprise so I could get your true reactions.
Okay, go for it.
It's actually not that exciting.
Is it going to be the eBay tip again?
Well, finally you mentioned eBay.
Oh no.
So I have been buying these like stick-on vinyl nails from eBay, and look for 5 weeks.
Oh wow!
And they're still on. It's been so great. So I'm partially lazy to like go to the salon and go do my acrylics or whatever people do. So, and I know that costs a bit as well. I don't know how much it costs, but I know it's a little bit. But these ones from eBay, they're like $10 for a packet of like 6 sets or something. And so far, what did I say? 5 weeks? It's lasted me 5 weeks just in one set.
Wow. So with one set, do you get multiple colors and whatever, or is it like mixed? Or
Owen wants to try.
Yeah.
Well, one set is like for like both hands. That's what I mean.
Okay.
But it came with like 6 times that. and they all come with different patterns and designs, and you can choose which one you like. And
so you're set for the rest of the year.
I'm set for the rest of the year, guys. Don't need to go.
How much? $10?
$10. eBay. I love eBay.
Wow. Okay, well that's debatable, but you got to give us a link to this resource, because I'm sure there are men and women that are listening to this that would love a quick savings hack like this, because it would get expensive. Now, I don't know. I'm not up to date with the industry here. You guys may be able to correct me on this, but I would imagine that type of thing might cost like $30 or $40.
A little bit higher, but
wow.
Kate, do you get your nails done?
Yes.
So like,
that's probably the one thing I spend a bit of money on.
Which is totally fine.
$70 a month.
Yeah,
you can stretch it to 5 weeks. So, but I have stopped going to the hairdresser very often. I decided that was something I could do without. So it probably is evident. But anyway, I'm going au naturel that way.
Au naturel, like it, Kate. That's a good one, Mon. I'm like, it's not maybe from down my alleyway, but I think that's a great one, because that's a wonderful way to like for a lot of, I'm going to say, women.
Mm-hmm.
That's something. Obviously, maybe they enjoy this experience of going to salons or whatever, and guys love haircuts and that sort of stuff. But when the budget, purse strings aren't as loose as they once were, like you've got to tighten it a bit. That's actually a really good way to do that. And you could always just have bring your friends around and.
Yeah, I did it with my sister. It was like a little craft date as well. Like, let's do our nails.
Oh wow,
it was great.
Okay, and bonus points for the voice there, that accent. So, I mean, that's pretty good. That's probably better than all mine put together. Is that what you've brought to the table for this month?
I've got another one.
Okay.
It's completely unrelated, but I have been seeing a lot of comedy lately, a lot of free comedy. I've been going to the Comics Lounge down in North Melbourne. And if you subscribe to their mailing list, they send you lots of emails, but they're good ones because they're like, oh, competition time, enter in this competition, you might win to see blah, blah, blah. And so far I've won every time. I don't know if I'm just lucky.
Wow.
Or if they just don't have a lot of people on the mailing list.
Are we going to see you up on stage soon?
No. But they also have, like, say when it's the International Comedy Festival, that's what it's called, right? Yep. They do like practice runs of whatever comics sets are. And so you don't know who you're seeing on the night. So it's a surprise every time. But I did it this year in April, or just before April it was. And I saw like Arj Barker and Husey. So they're all like really good comics that come down.
That's great. That's great. And I'm sure like there are comic lounges all across the country. So that's great. Kate, you can do things like improv nights. They're pretty cheap to go and watch, right?
Yeah, improv's typically a very low cost activity to go and see. There's usually improv groups in most states, and then you can go and see a show for $5, $10, $15. Cheap and cheerful.
That's pretty good. I like that. Okay, well, Monique's given us nails and comedy, which is a pretty good combo. What about you, Kate?
Well, this is not groundbreaking, but part of my trip overseas was a 2-week walking sort of self-guided trip in the French countryside. And cool. I've realized going on a walking trip is a fantastic way to not spend much money on holidays. One, because you're staying in regional areas, so regional costs for accommodation. You're eating where the locals eat, so the food is substantially cheaper compared to, say, if you were in a capital city like Paris, or we did go to Lyon later, so that was quite a lot more expensive. Even just there's nothing to buy also, so you're not buying souvenirs. There's nothing, no shops tempting you. Most of these towns have a bakery, a butcher, a restaurant. That's about it. So, and there's no museums to go and see. So if you like walking, a walking holiday is a great way to see the countryside that you wouldn't normally see and not spend much money.
I love that. And even if it's not like a holiday, you could even just do that, like take a weekend or a day trip. I mean, there are so many. We are blessed here in Australia to have so many wonderful areas that you can access on the cheap.
Pack your picnic and you're good to go.
Yeah, and this like literally every place in Australia has within a day trip's distance just the most idyllic surrounds. So love it. Yeah, love it. And yeah, why not picnic? Nothing to spend money on, but fresh air. That sounds pretty good to me. Any more for us this month?
My other tip is preventative spending money. If you are the owner of a property and you live in it, you probably haven't got a smoke alarm or an electrical safety check done in recent years, because if you are a renter, especially in Victoria, landlords have to do this every couple of years by law. But if you own your own place, you probably haven't done this. So paid recently and got a qualified electrician to come out and check all the power points, check the electrical switchboard was up to scratch. Told me that some of the extension boards were really bad, cheap ones that were going to be overloaded. So gave some suggestions on better ones to purchase, because it's a older style apartment. It doesn't have that many PowerPoint switches. So there was quite a few extension boards plugged in. Yeah. So I've got some tips and tricks there to improve safety, and also check the smoke alarms, which is another life-saving device. The electrician did point out that so many people don't give them the time of day when it comes to checking those smoke alarms and making sure they're installed correctly and they're in warranty and the battery's done. So, and they are important life-saving devices. So I think it's worth the money, spending a few $100s. Even if you're living in it yourself, sure, you can try and check these things, but if you get an expert, they know what they're looking for.
Yeah. And it's interesting because most people wouldn't do that, Kate, because they think if they get the electrician out, they're just going to get more bills to pay. But it's one of those things. It's like spending on something which seems unnecessary until you need it, and then it's the most valuable thing in the world, right? Like a smoke alarm.
They were quoting for extra things, so they said we could do this. It's not needed, but you could have this done if you wanted, or you could upgrade to this switch. It's not needed for safety. It's just good to have. So I think there was a tiny bit of upselling, but I thought it was a really good quality review. So
cool. Like that. We had to get our switchboard updated recently because we were in this old weatherboard shack, and I think it was from like 30 years ago or something ridiculous. So we got to upgrade. It wasn't too bad, and it was necessary, and it gives us flexibility for the future. So well worth it. And if it's safer, stops the power going out for whatever reason, why not? Anything else before I share a quick few tips and tricks?
Well, I also had a recipe from Recipe Tin Eats for crispy frozen pea fritters. So if you want a low-cost meal, and it was so easy, and even I couldn't stuff it up. Just a few ingredients, mostly things you can have in the freezer, ready to go at a moment's notice instead of doing Uber Eats. I would recommend that one, so I'll put it in the show notes.
So crispy frozen pea fritters.
Yeah,
and this is
great.
This is something that this is a resource that you've used before, not the fritters per se, but the website.
I kind of exclusively cook Recipe Tin Eats recipes at the moment during my learning journey of cooking, and I try and cook something new each week, and I've learned a lot from it. So
why do you use them? What is it about them that you like?
Nudgy's recipes are great. They break down everything step by step. There's a lot of pictures. There's how-to videos. She pretty much gives you every variation as well. So if you don't have this cut of meat, she says what other cuts of meat you can use, or if you've run out of this ingredient, she'll give you alternatives. So I would say it's the most comprehensive recipe. When you look at the website, the page will go on and on and on and on. But that's because there's a lot of choices and a lot of information. And then you look at the comment section, and there's people going, I swapped this out for this and it worked really well. So I think it's a very comprehensive resource. And if you like reading someone's life story with the cooking, that's a good place to go.
Yeah, great. I like that. So I'll jump on the back of that with some food related things as well. So you mentioned, actually, I'll let you maybe chuck this one in, Kate, because you did park it in the show notes for us, which is Farmer's Pick. I think we might have mentioned this once before on the show, but can you tell us what this is?
Yeah, so it's in quite a few of the states of Australia, but it is imperfect fruit and vegetable subscription box kind of thing. So you get often fruit and veggie that's been rejected for various reasons, because it might be too big or too small or a bit more wonky shaped from the supermarket, so they can buy all of that in bulk and distribute it in boxes across Australia. So you're supposed to save a bit of money, and you get fruit and veg delivered directly from the farmers.
Yeah, great. So I think we've used that one before, and I think some of our close friends use that. But we have really wanted to migrate to eating organic fruit and vegetables. So this is how I kind of grew up. It sounds kind of privileged to be able to do this, and I was very blessed to be able to do this. But obviously when you're a kid, you don't care. You just want the biggest, fluffiest apple you can get. It doesn't really matter if it's organic or not. But it's been years since I've truly committed to an organic diet, and just with all the health-related reasons and nutritional reasons, I thought we'd give it a crack. And we don't like going to the supermarket. Like that for me is just like dead time. Like, why would I go to a supermarket if I don't have to? So we order all of our fruit and veg online. But what we've found in experimenting with some of the fruit and veg things is that they it's not always the greatest. But we found this one, and it's a pity it's just Melbourne-based, but it's called farmboxco.com.au. And every week on a subscription, we get organic fruit and veg delivered. And there's different sizes and boxes and styles and whatever you can choose from. But we kind of just let them choose whatever's like seasonal and freshest. And I got to admit, this is going to sound so weird for people, but I'm sure we've all had moments like this where I just wanted to make like potatoes, just like literally just potatoes the other day. So I did like steamed potatoes. And I was like, how good can these be? And just literally wash the potatoes because they're organic. There's no like nothing on them. So to clean the dirt off and just steam these potatoes and had them. And it was like I was eating the world's best like meal from McDonald's or something. I was just like, oh my God. A potato that actually tastes like potato. Like,
a good potato. Yep.
My mind was blown. Like it was just like, oh my gosh, what have I been eating for the past 10 years? Like this was so different to anything I've experienced, at least in the past 5 to 10 years. And I was just like, this is unreal. And I'm so glad that we found this company, Farmbox Co, because we've only been doing it for about a month and it's just unreal. And it's interesting, like for the first couple of weeks, we over-ordered, to be fair. Now we're on like the medium box or whatever. But normally you could have like an apple in your fruit bowl for like a week and you'd probably get away with it. But with these, you definitely can't. Like you have to eat them. And so it forces us to eat more fruit and veg, do more fruit salads, do more vegetable related dinners. And I guess that's the whole thing, right? Is if it doesn't go off, it's probably got something in it that is making it not go off. So this is the crazy thing. We still have apples in our fruit bowl from like Coles or Woolies that are still the same as when we bought them like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
No.
But we've been through like 3 or 4 organic boxes in that time and they've all gone off. Right? So like I was just like mind blown. So couldn't like rate it more highly. So I'll pop a link in the show notes, but also in the community if anyone's got any ideas for other states,
and there's companies that do similar things with meat. I was having a look that direct from farm, but my problem is that to make it worth it with shipping or get the free shipping, you need a lot of freezer space, and I've only got a small freezer, so it won't work quite yet, but in the future.
Yeah, we've used things in the past like Our Cow and that type of thing, which is an online service, which is pretty manageable in terms of what you get delivered, and you can trace back to the farm, like the origin. So that's pretty cool for folks that want to do that. But other than that, I got 2 more things. One is, as we announced on the Rask Invest Live show, which is now every Thursday at 12 noon, you can tune into the Rask YouTube channel for an hour and we go live and answer questions, do presentations every Thursday. So check that out. But people who listen to the Australian Finance Podcast will know we recently did a deal where we've got advertising from Pocketsmith. So Pocketsmith has come on board and we're super stoked about this. And having gotten to know the crew over the last few months, they actually gave us like typically when a new sponsor comes on board, we want to experience their products first, obviously, which seems like a no-brainer. So we did that and feedback was great. And then I was like, well, you know what? It is pretty tight. You know, we're refinancing our house, which is something that we've spoken about on the property podcast recently. And so like we wanted to get our budget in shape and after coming back from Europe, get like knuckled down, and just using Pocketsmith has been a really good tool. And this is not like I'm not paid to say this. I just think it's a genuinely really good tool. And literally everyone that's used it has said the same. So I was thinking about this in the context of today's show. It's one of those things where I think it's like, I'm trying to think of subscriptions where the more you spend, like the better you'll be with money, or like the more you'll save longer term. I don't know of many things where you'd actually spend on something and it would hopefully generate more money in the future. But I think it's a great tool for visualizing and
Maybe
forecasting your
Choice?
budget. Choice, very good example. Yeah, that's another one. And another one that I subscribe to is Choice. I do the annual subscription, so I don't notice it as much. But Choice is a good one for product recommendations. So I'm going to combine hopefully a detox month, a financial detox month, with using Pocketsmith to track our expenses and to get on board with Pocketsmith and start tracking everything month to month.
So you're cutting everything out of your budget and then building it back up again? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So this is from Mel Brown. People might be familiar with her. She's on big Instagrammer these days, but she's a former financial advisor and now a coach, I guess. And she has a program online, which is wonderful. But she first talked about this idea, how to un-F your finances, I think was the book where I read it in. May have been one of her other books, but she talked about this idea of a detox and how she still does them regularly. And the idea is that, you just strip back to the bare essentials for a week, for a month, for whatever. And then you can always add the things back on. And it's kind of like a reset. It's kind of like how people do detoxes with their diet. I have no comment on whether that's good or healthy, so don't take it from me. But how people try and do those things to try and just reset a bit. And I think right now, if you're thinking, well, times are pretty tough, but I also struggle to budget, I feel like that's a good way to do it. It's just a month. Just a month. It's just 1 month. See if you can get through it. See how you can track your finances just for 30 days. And then you can always put the things back on that are really important to you. But a good example of this might be like if you've got 5 subscriptions, just cut it down to 1. Like, don't get rid of them all, maybe, but just have 1. And then after 30 days, see if you missed the other 4 that you had, right?
So you're going to update us next month on how this detox month went?
Well, the thing is, Kate, that we already did a lot of cutting of the subscriptions and the costs and expenses before we committed to doing the detox. So the actual change doesn't look as good. But yeah.
With some of the pre-detox changes.
Yeah. I mean, like we're going to save maybe $500, maybe $1,000 a month. So
that's substantial, Owen.
It's huge, yeah, because there were a lot of things that we didn't realize had gone up in price, like really substantial things. Like for example, we still got Amazon, but like say a Netflix subscription, we got Netflix when it first came to Australia. So like however long ago that was, when it was basically free. But now we're on like a $30 a month plan and all this sort of stuff. So we just don't need that, right? And things like that have gone up in price. So it's also another reason that we're using this Farmbox Co, because contrary to popular opinion, it's actually cheaper to eat healthier. So we have been using that as a way to replace the more expensive things that go into our meals, such as meat. So it's been awesome. And it's a way to substitute and still feel healthy. So we'll keep you updated and we'll circle back to this next month. But I'll pop a link in the show notes to all that sort of stuff and as well as, in the community. Speaking of some news, I'll just be quick with this. You can join us in the Rask community. I'll let you read those out in a minute, Kate. But it's an online free community. Anyone can join and it's daily, it's growing and it's wonderful. And it's not on Facebook, which I'm happy about. So you can come over and talk about things like all different types of things, which Kate will cover in a moment. We've continued to roll out our Rask Invest service, which is the service that allows us to invest for people. It's been really interesting speaking to a lot of people of all shapes and sizes. We did set one important update here is we did set the recommended minimum investment at $20,000. And that was simply to make sure that people were adequately diversified when we invested for them. But there has been some questions about like kids accounts and that sort of stuff being set up recently. So you can go on the website and you can invest $10,000 to start your account now, which is really important to note. So if you're kind of like you were thinking that you might want to invest with us, we can do that. You don't need previously, like you'd have to write into us and we would have to kind of manually approve it, but you don't have to do that now. You can just literally go on and create your account and get started with us, which I'm excited about. And we've got more developments in that space around kids. And that's really it. I don't want to bore everyone to death, but we've got a lot of things going on, but that's probably the main thing. Kate, in terms of the community, what's been talked about lately?
I just thought I'd call out a few of the conversation topics. So if anyone is interested in these things, you can jump in and read the comments, add your own. But there was a topic about how much should a good tax accountant cost for tax returns. So I thought that was interesting because a lot of people are doing their tax returns at the moment. I hope you've listened to the ATO Tax Basics episode before you do that, so you don't make any mistakes that are going to cost you a bit of time and money. There was a post about what we can learn from the collapse of Booktopia, which was a very sad event for people that enjoy reading books in Australia. And then there's also a topic, actually quite a few topics on investing for kids. That's quite a common discussion. So there was quite a few, if you go back and read different posts there's a lot of discussion on that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because investing for kids has always been a thing. But like you just said, I've noticed this, not just in our community, but in many different communities. This is really common. Like, as part of people investing with us, Mitch does a lot of those one-on-one calls where people, just want to get comfort with who we are and what we do and how we do it. But I've done quite a few of them as well. And just speaking with people, how common this is, even for people that don't have kids yet. Like they're already thinking about how can I start planning for that. I actually been taken back. In fact, it is by far the most popular thing that people are talking to us about. It is by far the most popular. The second would be ethical investing, but it's definitely not as popular. It'd be like for every 10 that talk about investing for kids, there'd be one that talks about ethical investing. It's been fascinating. So anyone can jump in and have their 2 cents on that. Okay, interesting finds and resources for this month. We've got a few things that we like to share. If you want some inspiration, if you want to feel good, if you want to keep learning outside of what we do here at Rask, there are other things out there, and we do this as well. So, Mon, do you have anything for us this month?
Not really. I've been watching a lot of Great Bake Off, so I've been inspired to bake more, therefore saving me money. Does that count?
That counts. Great Bake Off.
If you bring some baked goods to the office next week, that counts.
Done.
Yeah.
I made a lemon cream the other night.
A lemon cream?
Yeah.
That sounds like lemon cake, but softer.
It's lemon cream to go into like these wafer thingos, and it was cool. I've never made it before.
Great.
And I mean, if you didn't make it with organic lemons, there's more for you and me because Owen won't be able to have any.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm anti non-organic lemons at the moment. That's great. Okay. How about you, Kate?
I'm listening to the audiobook The Last Victim by Tracy Hall. So it's the full story behind the Who the Hell is Hamish podcast about an Australian woman who lost $317,000 of her savings to one of Australia's most prolific con men. And she's really big on scam awareness now too. So she's doing a lot of podcasts and talking in public about scam awareness, how it can happen to anyone really. And what are some of the warning signs, and maybe what happens when it involves a relationship and you trust that person. So just sort of managing that. If you have Spotify Premium, you can listen to it for free. It's about 15 hours worth. So you can, you don't even have to buy it, or maybe your library can order it in and you can listen to or read the book there for free. So that saves you money. The Last Victim.
By Tracy Hall.
She was his last victim, and then he got arrested.
Oh, wow. I do remember listening to Who the Hell is Hamish. That was such a interesting series, and for all the wrong reasons. But it's good to see that something positive has come out of it. And I've got to say, for folks who are thinking, should I buy the book or should I listen on Spotify? I get it for free. Does that support the author? Or should I listen to it on Audible? Oftentimes, authors make more money from you listening to it on Spotify or on Audible than they do from the actual physical book. So if you're thinking that's not like something that you want to do, I would say do it. And then you can always buy the book as well if you think that's a great book. I know a lot of people do that. So Spotify Premium subscription, why not? Huh? Why not give it a go? Anything else for us, Kate?
For a bit of fun, not well, I guess it's definitely involved with money, but not your money. Clarkson's Farm, season 1, 2, 3, fantastic. Watching Jeremy Clarkson try to run a farm, it might sound like a weird premise, but it is a very heartwarming show. It shows you the costs that go into producing food in the United Kingdom and all of the regulation around that. And there's some very fun, quirky characters. So if you want a feel-good show when you get home from work, I'd recommend Clarkson's Farm. I think it's on Amazon Prime, so you might have to pay for something to watch it.
Okay. Well, that's I've heard many different recommendations for that. I guess one of the things is that you and I both have a shared passion for farms and getting outside and doing these types of things on land, Kate. So maybe it's a thing more so for people like us, but I think if it's
I'm
got
sure
class,
Monique
it'd be
would
funny.
still enjoy it.
Yeah.
She loves a bit of a reality
We'll do a bit of a
show.
test.
Oh, yeah. I do love reality shows.
For me, I didn't realize yours was so similar to mine, but there's a fellow in Australia by the name of Hedley Thomas. He's a journalist who works with The Australian, and some people may know of his previous podcast, The Teacher's Pet or The Teacher's Trial, or these types of podcasts. These are like a cold case type podcasts, and they're extremely well done, probably the highest narration quality I've come across in Australian podcasting. And he's got a new one out called Bronwyn, which tracks the story of someone living in Lennox Head up in New South Wales coast there. I won't take anything away from it, but you can find the podcast in any good podcast player. It's called Bronwyn, and it's really, I think it's about 10 episodes at the moment, and it brings you up to speed with kind of like a current podcast investigation. So I'll say no more, but other than that, it's called Bronwyn. Something funny for this month, I listened to the Theo Von podcast with Louis Theroux. Louis Theroux is the another investigative kind of journalist that you may be familiar with, who did things like where he goes into like the communes, or he goes into like the extremist type places, a lot of them in America. And he just explores their reality, as well as things like prostitution and all different types of things that are more taboo topics, or things that are kind of like on either side of the spectrum in terms of the kind of like the far right, far left type groups. And he goes and explores what their reality is. And over the years, he's become internationally famous. And it was really interesting to hear him sit down with Theo Von, who's just a straight up comedian from the southern part of America, and one of the most popular podcasts on YouTube, actually. So that's the Theo Von podcast with Louis Theroux. Highly recommend. And finally, there was one extra podcast that I listened to this month. It's just a single episode on the Tim Ferriss podcast, which was with Jamie Foxx and Jacqueline Novogratz. So Jamie Foxx, obviously, actor, singer, comedian, kind of like a triple threat there. But also Jacqueline Novogratz, who comes from this family, which is really a kind of unique family in that so many of them have gone on to do wonderful things. And she talks about things like conscious capitalism and how people can use their money and what they care about to see the future unfold. And Tim Ferriss has been doing these. I don't know if either of you two have listened to them, but these episode formats called combo episodes, which is where he gets like two titans and puts them in the same episode. They're not in the same conversation, but they're in one episode together. And it kind of prompts you to, like, you might click on the episode because it's Jamie Foxx, but then you listen to Jacqueline Novogratz about something else, right? And it's fascinating. So really good conversations. Highly recommend the Tim Ferriss episodes, the combo episodes. So those are what I got, and that's about it.
Cool.
One of our first Money and Chill with the three of us remotely done. So welcome back to Australia, Kate. And you too, Mon. You were over in the US not too long ago. So
it feels like a lifetime ago now.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. Yeah. Take me back.
We're all back on deck for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we're all back. So we'll be back this coming week with more episodes and more ideas to bring to the Australian Finance Podcast. Don't forget the community is available 24/7. You can download the Circle app. It's all built on Circle, and you can chat with us on the go. I'm in there literally multiple times a day. So jump in, have a chat if you've got any questions, or you just want to contribute, send us your ideas. You can always do that via Spotify or just by getting in touch, generally speaking. So we'd love to hear from you. And it's been great to be back on deck with you, Kate and Mon. So ladies, Monique, thanks for joining me.
Anytime.
And Kate, always a pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.